I stared at the painting, my fingers trembling as I held the accompanying note. The brushstrokes were hauntingly familiar, but I couldn't place them. The message, however, was crystal clear. You betrayed me, Jenna. Now it's time to pay. My heart raced as I set the painting down on the kitchen counter. Who could have sent this, and what betrayal were they talking about? I racked my brain, but came up empty. The doorbell rang, startling me out of my thoughts. Max? I breathed a sigh of relief as my boyfriend walked in, his suit slightly rumpled from a long day at the office. Hey, babe, he said, giving me a quick peck on the cheek. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I gestured to the painting. This arrived today. No return address, just this cryptic message. Max frowned, picking up the note. His eyes widened as he read it. Jenna, this is serious. Do you have any idea who might have sent it? I shook my head, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. No, I don't. I've been racking my brain all afternoon, but I can't think of anyone I've betrayed. Max pulled me into a hug, his cologne enveloping me. It's okay. We'll figure this out together. Have you called the police? Not yet, I admitted. I wanted to talk to you first. Do you think I should? He nodded, his face serious. Absolutely. This could be a threat, Jenna. We need to take it seriously. As Max dialed the police, I found myself staring at the painting again. It was a landscape, a serene meadow with a solitary tree in the center. But something about it felt off, almost sinister. They're sending an officer over, Max said, hanging up the phone. He hesitated for a moment, then added, Jenna, I've been thinking, maybe this is a sign. I turned to him, confused. A sign of what? He took my hands in his eyes intense. A sign that we should get married. Present a united front against whoever's trying to intimidate you. I blinked, taken aback. Max, I don't know. This is all happening so fast. I know, he said quickly. But think about it. We've been together for 3 years. We live together. Marriage is the next logical step, right? Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. The police officer, a kind-faced woman in her 40s, listened patiently as we explained the situation. We'll dust for prints, she said, bagging the painting and note. In the meantime, Miss Carter, I'd advise you to be extra cautious. Keep your doors locked and report any suspicious activity immediately. After she left, Max turned to me again. So, what do you think about getting married? I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Max, I love you, but this is a lot to process right now. Can we talk about it later? He nodded, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. Of course. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have sprung that on you. As we settled in for the night, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The painting, the note, Max's sudden proposal, it all felt like the beginning of something bigger, something I wasn't sure I was ready for. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. Honey, are you okay? I had the strangest feeling something was wrong. I stared at the message, debating whether to tell her about the painting. Mom had always been my rock, especially after Dad died, but I didn't want to worry her unnecessarily. Everything's fine, Mom, I typed back. Just a busy day at work. Love you. As I set my phone down, I caught Max watching me from across the room. You didn't tell your mom? I shook my head. Not yet. I don't want to worry her until we know more. He nodded, but something in his expression made me uneasy. It was almost as if he was relieved. I pushed the thought away, chalking it up to stress. But as I drifted off to sleep that night, the image of the painting haunted my dreams, along with a nagging feeling that my life was about to change in ways I couldn't begin to imagine. I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing down my dress for the 100th time. The engagement ring on my finger felt heavy, a constant reminder of the whirlwind past few days. You look beautiful, Max said, coming up behind me and wrapping his arms around my waist. I forced a smile. Thanks. I just want to make a good impression on your parents. He kissed my cheek. They'll love you. How could they not? As we drove to his parents' mansion, I couldn't shake the knot in my stomach. The mysterious painting was still fresh in my mind, and now I was about to meet my future in-laws for the first time. It felt like too much, too fast. We're here, Max announced, pulling up to an imposing iron gate. It swung open, revealing a driveway that seemed to stretch for miles. I gasped as we approached the house, if you could call it that. It was more like a palace, all gleaming white stone and manicured gardens. You grew up here? I asked, suddenly feeling very small. Max shrugged. It's just a house. But it wasn't just a house. It was a statement, a declaration of wealth and power that made me acutely aware of the vast difference in our backgrounds. Carol and George were waiting for us in the foyer, a grand space with a crystal chandelier and marble floors. Carol air-kissed my cheeks, her perfume overwhelming. "Jenna, darling, welcome," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We've heard so much about you." George shook my hand, his grip firm. "So, you're the girl who's captured our Max's heart." We moved to the dining room, where a feast was laid out on fine china. As we ate, Carol peppered me with questions about my work, my family, my life. "And your father, dear? What does he do?" she asked, taking a sip of wine. I swallowed hard. "My father passed away when I was young." A heavy silence fell over the table. Carol and George exchanged a look I couldn't quite decipher. "I'm so sorry to hear that," George said, his tone oddly flat. "It must have been difficult, growing up without a father figure." I nodded, feeling a familiar ache in my chest. "It was, but my mom is amazing. She did everything she could for me." Carol raised an eyebrow. "Everything? I'm sure she tried her best, but a child needs both parents. Don't you agree, Max?" I turned to Max, expecting him to defend me, to say something, anything, but he just stared at his plate, silent. "I think Jenna turned out just fine," I said, my voice tight. "My mom made sure I never felt like I was missing out on anything." George chuckled, the sound grating on my nerves. "Of course, dear, but surely you can see why we might be concerned. Max comes from a complete family. We always hoped he'd marry into one as well." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Excuse me?" Carol reached across the table, patting my hand in a gesture that felt more condescending than comforting. "We just want what's best for our son. I'm sure you understand." I looked at Max again, silently pleading with him to say something, but he remained quiet, avoiding my gaze. "I think I need some air," I said, standing abruptly. My chair scraped against the floor, the sound echoing in the tense silence. I hurried out to the garden, my heart pounding. The cool night air did little to calm the storm of emotions raging inside me. How dare they judge me, judge my family? And Max, why didn't he say anything? I heard footsteps behind me and turned, expecting, hoping to see Max. But it was Carol, her silk dress rustling as she approached. "Jenna," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "I hope we didn't upset you. We're just looking out for our son's interests." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "I understand that. But my family, my upbringing, they made me who I am. And Max loves who I am." Carol's smile tightened. "Does he, or does he love the idea of rebelling against his family?" As her words sank in, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. What if she was right? What if Max's sudden proposal wasn't about love at all, but about defying his parents? I looked back at the house, where Max was still inside, still silent. And for the first time since he'd slipped that ring on my finger, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. I stood in the garden, Carol's words ringing in my ears. The cool night air did nothing to calm the storm brewing inside me. I heard footsteps and turned, hoping to see Max. Instead, it was George, his imposing figure silhouetted against the mansion's lights. "Jenna," he said, his voice gruff, "I think we got off on the wrong foot." I crossed my arms, steeling myself. "Did we, or did you just show your true colors?" George chuckled, the sound grating on my nerves. "You've got spirit, I'll give you that. But you have to understand, we have certain expectations for our son. And I don't meet them because my father's dead." The words came out harsher than I intended, but I was past caring. "It's not just that," George said, his tone maddeningly patient. "It's about lineage, about maintaining a certain standard. Surely you can see that?" Before I could respond, Max appeared at the patio door. "Everything okay out here?" I looked at him, silently pleading for support. But he just stood there, his expression unreadable. "We're fine, son," George said, clapping Max on the shoulder. "Just having a little chat with your fiancé." The word fiancé felt wrong now, tainted by the events of the evening. I pushed past them both, heading back into the dining room where Carol was sipping her wine, a smug smile on her face. "Feeling better, dear?" she asked, her voice dripping with false concern. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Actually, I think it's time Max and I left." Carol's eyebrows shot up. "But we haven't even had dessert. I had the chef prepare a special chocolate soufflé." "I've lost my appetite," I said coldly. Max finally spoke up. Jenna, don't you think you're overreacting a bit? My parents are just trying to get to know you. I stared at him, disbelief and anger warring inside me. Overreacting? They've insulted my family, my upbringing, and everything I am, and you've said nothing to defend me. Now, Jenna, George interjected, we're all family here, or we will be soon. Let's not say things we'll regret. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Family? Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm standing, it looks a lot like judgment and condescension. Carol stood, her face flushed. How dare you speak to us like that in our own home? Max, are you going to let her talk to us this way? All eyes turned to Max. This was his moment, his chance to stand up for me, to prove that our love was stronger than his parents' prejudices. I held my breath, waiting. Max looked from his parents to me, his face a mask of indecision. I think we all need to calm down. Jenna, maybe we should go home and discuss this later. His words hit me like a physical blow. In that moment, I saw our future laid out before me, a lifetime of being second best, of Max choosing his parents over me, of never quite measuring up to their standards. You're right, Max, I said, my voice eerily calm. We should go home, but not together. I pulled the engagement ring off my finger and set it on the table with a soft clink. The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Jenna, don't, Max started, but I cut him off. No, Max, I won't be part of a family that doesn't accept me for who I am, and I won't marry a man who won't stand up for me. I turned to Carol and George, my head held high. Thank you for dinner, and for showing me exactly what kind of family I was about to marry into. With that, I walked out, ignoring Max's calls behind me. As I stepped into the cool night air, I felt a strange mix of pain and liberation. The future I had imagined with Max was crumbling, but in its place I saw a new path opening up, one where I didn't have to compromise who I was for anyone. I hailed a cab at the gate, my hands shaking as I gave the driver my address. As we pulled away from the mansion, I caught a glimpse of Max in the rearview mirror, standing at the top of the driveway, watching me leave. But he made no move to follow, and in that moment, I knew I had made the right decision. The cab ride home was a blur of streetlights and silent tears. I fumbled with my keys at the door, my hands shaking. As I stepped inside, the familiar scent of home hit me, and I broke down. I sank to the floor, my back against the door, and let the sobs rack my body. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? Just days ago, I was happily planning a future with Max. Now I felt like a stranger in my own life. My phone buzzed incessantly, texts and calls from Max. I ignored them all. What could he possibly say to make this right? As dawn broke, I dragged myself to the shower, letting the hot water wash away the remnants of last night. I emerged feeling raw but determined. I had work to do, clients who depended on me. I couldn't let Max and his family derail my life. At the office, I threw myself into my projects with a fervor that surprised even me. My assistant, Lisa, kept shooting me concerned glances. Jenna, are you okay? She finally asked around lunchtime. You seem different. I forced a smile. I'm fine, Lisa, just focused. But as the day wore on, the facade began to crack. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped, half expecting to see Max's name. By late afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I'm heading out early, I told Lisa. Can you reschedule my last appointment? I drove aimlessly, not ready to face the emptiness of my apartment. Without realizing it, I found myself at the park where Max had proposed just days ago. The memory, once sweet, now felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I sat on a bench, watching families and couples stroll by, their happiness a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. That's when I saw him, Max, walking towards me with a determined look on his face. Jenna, he said, sitting down beside me. We need to talk. I stiffened. I think we said everything we needed to say last night. Or rather, you didn't say anything when it mattered. He winced. I know. I messed up. But you have to understand, my parents. Your parents? I cut him off. Max, this isn't about them. It's about us. About you not standing up for me, for us. I'm sorry, he said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. I was caught off guard. I didn't expect them to react that way. I laughed bitterly. Really? Because it seemed pretty clear to me that they've always felt that way about people like me. People like you? Max echoed, frowning. Yes, Max. People who didn't grow up with silver spoons in their mouths. People who had to work for everything they have. He shook his head. That's not fair. My parents just want what's best for me. And I'm not what's best for you. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. Max's silence was deafening. In that moment, I saw our relationship for what it truly was, a fantasy built on shaky ground. I think you should move out, I said quietly. His head snapped up. What, Jenna? No, we can work this out. I stood, suddenly feeling stronger than I had in days. No, Max, we can't. Because this isn't just about last night. It's about who we are, fundamentally. And I don't think we're as compatible as we thought. Is this about the painting? He asked suddenly. The one you received before? All this? I froze. In the chaos of the past few days, I'd almost forgotten about the mysterious painting. What do you know about it? Max looked away, his expression guilty. Nothing. I wondered if it had anything to do with your decision. But I could see it in his eyes. He was hiding something. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Max knew more than he was letting on about the painting and who sent it. I think you should leave now, I said, my voice cold. And when I get home, I expect your things to be gone. As I walked away, leaving Max on the bench, I felt a strange mix of pain and liberation. The future I had imagined was crumbling, but in its place a new determination was forming. I would get to the bottom of this mystery, with or without Max, and I would do it on my own terms. I stood outside my mother's modest house, my hand hovering over the doorbell. The weight of the past few days pressed down on me, making even this simple action feel monumental. Finally, I pressed the button, hearing the familiar chime inside. Mom opened the door, her face lighting up before quickly shifting to concern. Jenna, honey, what's wrong? I crumbled into her arms, the tears I'd been holding back finally breaking free. She guided me inside, settling me on the worn couch that had been a source of comfort throughout my childhood. It's over, Mom, I choked out between sobs. Max and we're done. She held me close, stroking my hair like she used to when I was little. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. What happened? Through hiccuping breaths, I recounted the disastrous dinner with Max's parents, his silence in the face of their judgments, and our final confrontation in the park. Mom listened intently, her face a mix of sympathy and barely concealed anger. And there's something else, I added, my voice dropping to a whisper. Remember that painting I told you about? The one with the threatening message? Mom nodded, her brow furrowing. Did you find out who sent it? No, but I think Max knows something about it. When I mentioned it, he got this guilty look on his face, like he was hiding something. Mom's eyes widened. Jenna, that's serious. Have you gone to the police? I shook my head. Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. I feel like I'm losing my mind, Mom. Nothing makes sense anymore. She squeezed my hand. We'll figure this out together, honey. Now, tell me about this painting. What did it look like? I described the landscape, the solitary tree, the haunting familiarity of the brushstrokes. As I spoke, I noticed Mom's face growing pale. Mom, what is it? She stood abruptly, crossing the room to an old bookshelf. She pulled out a dusty art book, flipping through the pages with trembling hands. I can't believe I didn't see it before, she muttered. Here, look at this. She thrust the book into my hands. On the page was a painting nearly identical to the one I'd received. The caption read, Solitude by Alfred Winters. Alfred Winters? I read aloud. Who's that? Mom sank back onto the couch, her face a mask of shock and something else. Guilt? Alfred is an old friend. We were close years ago, before I met your father. Okay, I said slowly, trying to process this new information. But what does he have to do with the painting I received? Mom took a deep breath. Alfred is Max's uncle. The room seemed to spin. What? How is that possible? It's a long, complicated story, Mom said, her voice heavy with regret. Alfred and George, Max's father, had a falling out years ago. Something about an inheritance. Alfred believed George cheated him out of his rightful share. I stared at her, stunned. And you knew about this? All this time? She nodded, unable to meet my eyes. I lost touch with Alfred after the feud. I never imagined it would come back to haunt us like this. My mind was reeling. The painting, Max's family, my mom's hidden past. It was all connected, but how? And why now? We need to find Alfred, I said, a new determination filling me. He's the key to all of this. He must know why I received that painting. Mom looked at me, worry etched on her face. Jenna, are you sure? Digging into this could be dangerous. These people, Max's family, they're powerful. I stood, my resolve strengthening with each passing moment. I'm sure, Mom. I've been pushed around, judged, and lied to. It's time I found out the truth, no matter what it costs. As I looked at my mother, seeing the mix of pride and fear in her eyes, I knew I was at a crossroads. The path ahead was uncertain, possibly dangerous. But for the first time in days, I felt a sense of purpose. Will you help me? I asked, extending my hand to her. Mom hesitated for just a moment before taking my hand, her grip firm and reassuring. Always, honey. We'll face this together. As we began to plan our next move, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to uncover secrets that would change everything. But I was ready. It was time to fight back. My heart pounded as Mom and I stood outside the imposing gates of Max's family mansion. This time, I wasn't here to impress anyone. I was here for answers. Are you sure about this, Jenna? Mom asked, her voice tight with concern. I nodded, my jaw set. We need to know the truth, Mom. About Alfred, about the painting, all of it. We rang the intercom, and after a moment of crackling silence, Carol's voice came through, dripping with false sweetness. Jenna, dear? What a surprise. And, is that Anne with you? We need to talk, I said firmly. It's important. The gate swung open with a reluctant groan. As we walked up the driveway, I could feel Mom tensing beside me. This place held memories for her, too, I realized. Carol and George were waiting in the foyer, their faces masks of polite confusion. Max stood behind them, his eyes widening when he saw me. Jenna, what's going on? He asked, moving towards me. I held up a hand, stopping him. Not now, Max. We're here to talk about Alfred. The room went deathly quiet. George's face hardened, while Carol's smile became brittle. I don't know what you think you know, George began, his voice low and dangerous. We know enough, Mom cut in, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. We know about the feud, about the inheritance, and we know Alfred sent that painting to Jenna. Carol laughed, a high, nervous sound. That's ridiculous. Alfred's been out of our lives for years. He has nothing to do with Jenna. I pulled out my phone, bringing up the image of Alfred's painting. Then how do you explain this? The painting I received is nearly identical to one of Alfred's famous works. George's face flushed red. That proves nothing. Alfred always was a spiteful bastard. He's probably just trying to stir up trouble. By sending a threatening message to someone he's never met? I countered. That doesn't make sense, and you know it. Max stepped forward, his face pale. Jenna, please, let's talk about this privately. But I was done with secrets and lies. No, Max, I want the truth, and I want it now. What really happened with Alfred? The tension in the room was palpable. Carol and George exchanged a look that spoke volumes. It was a misunderstanding, Carol said finally, her voice trembling. Alfred thought he was entitled to more of the family fortune than he was. He became unstable. We had to cut ties for our own safety. Liar! Mom's shout made us all jump. Alfred was the kindest, most generous man I've ever known. He would never. You don't know what you're talking about, Anne, George snapped. You weren't there. You didn't see what he became. The pieces were starting to fall into place. This isn't just about money, is it? I said slowly. There's something else. Something you're all hiding. Max grabbed my arm, his grip tight. Jenna, stop. You don't want to go down this road. I wrenched my arm away, fury rising in me. Don't touch me. You've been lying to me this whole time, haven't you? You knew about Alfred, about the painting. You knew everything. His silence was all the confirmation I needed. I felt sick, betrayed all over again. We're leaving, I announced, grabbing Mom's hand. But this isn't over. I'm going to find Alfred, and I'm going to hear his side of the story. As we turned to go, George's voice stopped us cold. If you pursue this, Jenna, you'll regret it. Some secrets are better left buried. I looked back at him, at this family that had nearly become mine, and felt a chill run down my spine. Is that a threat, George? His smile was cold. Consider it a friendly warning, for your own good. As Mom and I walked out, I could feel the weight of their stares on my back. I had come looking for answers, but all I'd found were more questions and a sense of looming danger. But I wasn't backing down. Whatever the cost, whatever the risk, I was going to uncover the truth. And God help anyone who tried to stop me. I paced my living room, my mind racing with everything that had happened. The confrontation with Max's parents had left me shaken, but more determined than ever to uncover the truth. The sound of a key in the lock made me freeze. Max. He walked in, his face a mask of worry and guilt. "Jenna, we need to talk." "You're damn right we do," I snapped. "How long have you known about Alfred, about the painting?" Max sank onto the couch, his shoulders slumped. "I've always known about Alfred. The family doesn't talk about him, but I knew." "And the painting?" I pressed, my voice rising. "Did you know he was going to send it to me?" "No." Max's head shot up. "I swear, Jenna, I had no idea about that. When you showed it to me, I was as shocked as you were." I wanted to believe him, but the doubt had taken root. "Then why didn't you say anything? Why did you let me walk into that dinner with your parents completely unprepared?" Max ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every movement. I hoped it wouldn't come up, that we could just move forward without dredging up old family drama. "Old family drama?" I repeated incredulously. "Max, your uncle sent me a threatening painting. This isn't just some petty disagreement." I know, he said, his voice pleading. "But you have to understand my family. They're complicated. Alfred's accusations nearly tore us apart once. I couldn't risk that happening again." I stared at him, a cold realization settling in my gut. "So you chose them over me, over the truth." Max stood, reaching for me. "No, Jenna, it's not like that. I love you. I want a future with you. But Alfred, he's unstable, dangerous even. My parents were trying to protect us." I stepped back, out of his reach. "Protect us? By lying? By treating me like I'm not good enough for their precious family?" "That's not fair," Max protested. "They just need time to get to know you." "No," I said, my voice hard. "What's not fair is you hiding all of this from me. What's not fair is you standing by while your parents insulted me and my family." Max's face crumpled. "I'm sorry, Jenna. I should have told you everything. But please, can't we move past this? Start fresh?" For a moment, I wavered. Part of me wanted to forgive him, to believe that we could overcome this. But then I remembered the cold threat in George's voice, the secrets that still hung between us. "No, Max," I said quietly. "We can't, not until I know the whole truth, and I'm going to find it, with or without your help." His eyes widened. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to find Alfred," I declared. "I'm going to hear his side of the story." "Jenna, no," Max pleaded. "You don't know what you're getting into. Alfred is dangerous. He could hurt you." I laughed bitterly. "Hurt me? The only people who've hurt me lately are you and your family." Max grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "I can't let you do this. It's too risky." I wrenched away from him, anger and determination surging through me. "You don't get to decide what I can and can't do, Max. Not anymore." "If you do this," he said, his voice low and urgent, "there's no going back. You'll be choosing Alfred over me, over us." I met his gaze, unflinching. "No, Max. I'm choosing the truth. And if that means losing you, then so be it." The silence that followed was deafening. Max stared at me, a mix of hurt and anger in his eyes. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out the door. As it slammed behind him, I felt a strange mix of pain and liberation. I knew I was standing on the edge of something big, something that could change everything. But I was ready. Whatever came next, whatever truths I uncovered, I would face them head on. I picked up my phone and dialed my mom's number. "Mom, it's time. Let's find Alfred." The drive to Alfred's secluded cabin felt endless. Mom sat beside me, her face etched with worry and anticipation. As we pulled up to the rustic house nestled in the woods, my heart raced. This was it, the moment of truth. We approached the door, and I hesitated for a moment before knocking. The sound echoed in the quiet forest. Seconds ticked by, then the door creaked open. Alfred stood before us, his silver hair wild, his eyes sharp and wary. He looked from me to Mom, recognition dawning on his face. "Anne?" he breathed, disbelief coloring his voice. Mom stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Hello, Alfred. It's been a long time." His gaze shifted to me, understanding flickering in his eyes. "You must be Jenna. I've been expecting you." We followed him inside, the cabin filled with paintings and the smell of turpentine. Alfred settled into a worn armchair, gesturing for us to sit. "I suppose you're here about the painting," he said, his voice gruff. I nodded, leaning forward. "Why did you send it to me? What did you mean by that message?" Alfred's eyes clouded with pain. I thought you were in on it, that you knew about George's deception and were helping to cover it up." "In on what?" I pressed. "What did George do?" Alfred's face hardened. "He stole everything from me. Not just my inheritance, but my life's work, my paintings, my reputation. He destroyed it all. The story poured out of him, how George had manipulated contracts, spread lies about Alfred's mental state, and ultimately left him penniless and disgraced. "But why involve me?" I asked, my mind reeling. Alfred looked at Mom, his expression softening. "Because of Anne, I thought you might be helping George to keep the truth from her." Mom gasped, reaching for Alfred's hand. "Oh, Alfred, I had no idea. If I had known." As they talked, years of misunderstanding and pain unraveling between them, I felt a surge of anger towards George, towards Max, towards this whole twisted family. "We need to make this right," I declared, standing up. "We need to expose George for what he's done." Alfred shook his head, defeat in his eyes. "It's too late. George is too powerful, too well connected." "No," I said firmly. "It's not too late. We have evidence now. We have your testimony, and I have an idea." I outlined my plan, to use my connections in the art world to organize an exhibition of Alfred's work, to tell his story publicly, to force George to face the consequences of his actions. Alfred's eyes widened. "You would do that? For me?" I smiled, feeling a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. "Not just for you. For justice. For the truth." As we worked out the details, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. This wasn't just about exposing George or getting revenge. It was about standing up for what was right, about refusing to be silenced or pushed aside. Weeks later, I stood in the gallery, surrounded by Alfred's stunning paintings. The room buzzed with critics, collectors, and journalists. I saw George and Carol enter, their faces pale with shock. Max appeared at my side, his expression a mix of admiration and regret. "Jenna, I'm sorry. I should have believed in you." I met his gaze, feeling a twinge of sadness but no regret. "Thank you, Max. But this isn't about us anymore." As Alfred took the podium to tell his story, I watched George's facade crumble. The truth was finally coming to light, and with it, a sense of justice long overdue. In that moment, I realized that this journey had changed me. I was no longer the woman who doubted herself, who sought validation from others. I had found my strength, my voice. Mom squeezed my hand, pride shining in her eyes. "You did it, honey. You made things right." I smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. "We did it, Mom. Together." As the applause for Alfred filled the room, I knew that whatever came next, whether reconciliation or further battles, I was ready. I had faced my fears, uncovered the truth, and in doing so had discovered my own resilience and power. The painting that had started it all now hung on the wall, no longer a threat, but a testament to the strength of truth and the power of standing up for what's right. And as I looked at it, I saw not just Alfred's brushstrokes, but the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one painted in bold, fearless strokes of my own making.